Creative babble.
It was a regular day for 19-year-old Melissa Witt.
On August 6, a documentary series produced by Ridley Scott's production company premiered on Hulu. It's called At Wit's End. The 4-part series follows investigators, including the FBI, as they try to link Melissa Witt's murder to Charles Ray Vines. In the docuseries, detectives discuss how Charles Ray Vines was often seen wearing a bowling league shirt. He even had maps of the Ozark Mountains, including his cabin near where Melissa's body was found. Cadaver dogs found a cigarette filter and a mattress cover with Charles Ray Vines' DNA near his cabin. Then they found the same cigarette brand near where Melissa's body was found. They even tested the DNA found underneath Melissa Witt's fingernails. But in the end, the documentary team and the investigators came up short. They could not find any conclusive evidence to tie Charles Ray Vines to the Missy Witt murder. I've been working on this episode you're listening to right now for months, way before I learned about the Hulu documentary. Despite their lack of conclusive evidence, I'm thrilled that it's out there for the first time. It's presenting a different version of what really happened to Melissa Witt. Maybe I missed it, but I binged all 4 episodes of the Hulu doc, and there were no mentions of a Mickey Mouse watch or Daniel Watson. Finally, LaDonna's grip on the Melissa Witt case seems to be loosening. When I first learned about the Hulu documentary, I was really worried that LaDonna may have been involved somehow. So I called Scott Free, the production company behind the film, to warn them about possibly spreading misinformation. I was just really worried that she was involved, and I just wanted to give them a heads up. They transferred me to one of the show's producers. Before I could even tell them why I was calling, the producer asked, "Is this about the true crime author?" I said, "Yes, LaDonna Humphrey." The producer said, "Don't worry, we know all about her and are aware of what she's done." Whew, that was really reassuring. And sure enough, she wasn't even mentioned in the doc. Another notable absence from the documentary was former Fort Smith police detective J.C. Ryder. The officer believed to have given LaDonna so much access. And it's funny because the docuseries premiered on LaDonna's birthday, and the film never even mentioned her. That must have stung. I mean, the woman based her entire true crime career on the Melissa Witt case. Initially, LaDonna didn't even share the documentary on her social feeds, website, or nowhere really. LaDonna even took down the Who Killed Missy Witt Facebook page. If she truly had Melissa Witt's best interests in mind, wouldn't she be naturally excited about this documentary? But who are we kidding? LaDonna Humphrey would never miss out on an opportunity to seize on a media blitz. After all, self-promotion is one of LaDonna's greatest strengths. I was curious how she was going to try to capitalize on the new Hulu documentary, and she finally did it. LaDonna Humphrey appeared on an article of Newsweek the week the documentary was released, and for some reason, which can't be explained, the Newsweek reporter interviewed LaDonna Humphrey instead of the actual filmmakers, and they included the now debunked Mickey Mouse watch theory and LaDonna's alternate theory that Daniel Watson was responsible for the murder. I mean, for God's sakes, pure garbage. Today, we are going to continue our investigation into Charles Ray Vines, and you are going to hear my conversation with Thomas Seymour, the man whose testimony could link all of the pieces together. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend, stories about real people pretending to be someone else. Imagine this. It's the 1920s, the air is thick with secrets, the fashion is sharp, and somewhere in the shadows, a mystery is waiting to be unraveled. Welcome to June's Journey, the game that turns you into a detective in the heart of the roaring 1920s. You're not just playing another game, you're stepping into the shoes of June Parker, a woman on a mission to solve the murder of her sister. Every detail matters, from the clues hidden in the elegant parlors of New York to the cobblestone streets of Paris. But this isn't just about finding objects. It's about piecing together a story filled with twists, turns, and enough intrigue to keep you on the edge of your seat. What sets June's Journey apart? It's the way that the game pulls you into another time. The stunning visuals, the immersive storylines, and the thrill of solving a mystery make it more than just a game. It's an experience. Plus, with every puzzle you solve, you get closer to uncovering the truth behind June's sister's murder. So, are you ready to escape into a world of glamour, danger, and mystery? Download June's Journey for free today on iOS and Android. Trust me, once you start, you will not stop until you crack the case. Patty Rush, the president of Revamp, a victim advocacy group out of Fort Smith, Arkansas, was conducting research on the River Valley killer, Charles Ray Vines. She wanted to interview those close to Vines to find out if he had anything to do with the death of Leslie Dawn Haig, a 14-year-old girl who was strangled and whose body was left in a ravine. One of the contacts was Thomas Seymour, one of Charles Ray Vines' friends and neighbor. Patty had no idea that she was about to stumble upon a huge lead in the Melissa Witt murder case.
So I had gone to talk to Thomas about, I think what we were going to ask him was, could he give us a little information on Charles Ray Vines? Everybody said they were really, really close. They were closer than brothers, that if one did something, the other one would know about it. So I went and knocked on his door. First time we went, and he didn't answer.
The second attempt, Patty didn't go alone. She asked Patrick Fite, a relative of Leslie Dawn Haig, to come along with her.
And Patrick said, let's just wait him out. You notice there's a lot of cameras, let's just wait him out. So we did. And then when he came to the door, he opened the storm door just a little bit, and I introduced myself and I introduced Patrick. I said, can we talk to you? And he said, you're here about that Melissa Witt girl, aren't you? I said, yes. And so he came outside and stood on the porch and talked to Patrick and I said, would you be willing to go down to the office? It's not very far from here. And he said, why not? The rest,
Patrick?
That's Patrick. Hey, Patrick.
Hello. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Come on.
So, yeah, we were just getting started talking.
Yeah.
And she was just telling me, literally, when you walked in, she was telling me that you guys had just showed up at the door, knocked on his door, and he goes, are you here about Melissa Witt?
Yeah. It was pretty incredible little interview that we had with him.
What were you expecting him to say?
We didn't know.
He was pretty darn confident that it was Melissa Witt that
He
Charlie
said that
Vine was talking
the
about.
night that Melissa went missing,
Get her or
Yep.
something. Right.
He said he showed up with some beer. They were going to drink.
Yeah.
He said Charlie came out the door all dressed up, and he said, where you going? And he said, I'm going to bowling alley. I think that Melissa Witt I met at the bowling alley.
If this is true, that puts Charles Ray Vines at the bowling alley that night. It also leads us to believe that Charles Ray Vines may have known Melissa Witt. After all, they say he was an avid pool player, and he was a regular at that bowling alley. And she was a regular at the bowling alley. Again, take this information with a grain of salt, but it is noteworthy. But what really caught my eye was the fact that Thomas Seymour has also visited Charles Ray Vines' cabin in the Ozarks National Forest. A cabin that's only 3 miles away from where Melissa's body was found. Thomas Seymour, you kind of caught him in several conversations alluding to that he's been to that cabin multiple times. But I wonder why he was at the cabin that day. Like, why was he, you know what I mean? Like, did he ever tell you guys?
They went fishing, right?
Oh, they did. They went fishing.
So one of my concerns when Patty first told me the story was that the Melissa Witt case was a very popular case, and you could do revisionist history and be like, oh yeah, I knew Charles Vine. I saw a girl. It could have been a blonde girl. Could have been a girl, and that he started piecing this stuff together. How confident are you guys that what he told you guys in that affidavit was true?
I'm very confident.
I got the impression he was pretty confident. I was confident that he was.
Tell him what he thought to be the truth.
Yeah, I think that kind of what I got from him, and I hate to say this, I mean, he just kind of acted like he'd been waiting around on somebody to come ask him.
Well, he said that. He said, I've been waiting.
He had tried to offer up information back years
At the
ago,
yeah.
and I don't remember any of the details about it, but to the police, and the police they had their interactions with him, but at some point, they lost interest in anything he had to say, is what I was gathering talking to him. The recollection I have of the visit with him at his house is he said that he had mentioned he was going to meet her.
This is audio from that first meeting with Thomas Seymour.
But he did tell you he met Melissa, or you was with him when he met Melissa?
I was at his house, and he said he was heading out to meet some girls at the bowling alley.
Was it the same night?
After this first encounter, Patty asked Thomas if he could swing by the revamp office and record his testimonial and to sign a notarized affidavit.
He said some girl called named Witt, and she supposed to be meeting him at the bowling alley.
And that was that day that you showed up?
After the day I showed up, and he told me that he had to go, and I left and took my butt to the house. And
do you remember about what time that was?
It's in the evening time.
And he said Melissa by name?
He said Melissa by name. And then a couple of days later, I heard that Melissa Witt went missing. Only that I know that name, when I heard that name, it rung a bell in my head. I remember him mentioning this and specifically saying that he was going to meet some girl named Melissa at the bowling alley.
After he signed the affidavit at the revamp office, the FBI paid Thomas a visit. I personally believe that this was the spark that launched the task force that reopened the investigation on Charles Ray Vines. I have so many questions for Thomas Seymour, but I haven't been able to get a hold of him. So now I'm sitting at the revamp office coming up with a game plan. We think we know where he lives, but it's the middle of the day and he's probably at work. Patty suggests that we just drop by his work to see if he'll talk. This reminds me of my old TV news days when we just bust into people's offices with no notice. It was fun, but always a little nerve-wracking. You just never know how people will react.
I think that we'll go over and see Thomas. It's 11:14. I don't know what time he takes lunch, but I think we could probably coax him over here for his lunch hour.
Okay.
I think.
You know, he might be more comfortable standing outside of his workplace and talking.
Right. Well, whatever he...
Being kind of
So why don't we go over there, and I'll invite him over here for lunch at lunchtime.
Okay.
And I think he'll come.
So we hopped in Patty's truck and headed over to Thomas Seymour's job. And when I say we, I mean we, okay? Patty had 2 former law enforcement investigators joining us. They now work for Revamp, and yeah, they were packing.
Cooper Tires.
Yep, this is
Yeah, I'm
it.
thinking
this is what it came to.
Well, at least there's a lot of people here.
Yeah. So just you and I for now?
Let's just
All
do
right.
you and I. All right, y'all.
Patty's muscles stayed in the car because we just didn't want to make a scene. So we walked into the tire shop and asked to see Thomas Seymour.
Yeah. Hey there. What can I do for you?
I was wondering, is Thomas Seymour here?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if he's on lunch or if he's actually in the warehouse.
Okay. Is there any way we can find out?
Absolutely. Does anyone have eyes on Thomas?
Thomas, hey.
Hello, Patty.
How are you doing?
Hang in there.
I just told him, I said, yeah,
Thomas Seymour walked into the office, and he wasn't super excited to see us. In fact, he was giving me the hairy eyeball and kept looking at my recorder. I was holding it very discreetly in my hand.
I just
Nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
have you already had lunch? You want to go to lunch?
I can't go right now.
No, when you do go to lunch, you want to go to lunch?
Sure, why not?
Why not?
Patty asked Thomas Seymour if he could go to lunch. He said he couldn't because he was in the middle of a project. However, he did agree to meet us at 5 o'clock after work. So let's cross our fingers.
I got you.
Okay.
All right, we'll buy you lunch and we'll see you in just a little bit.
All right.
I'm sorry to bother you at work. I didn't know how to get a hold of you. That's why, because I had your own number. Yeah, makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
That's yours.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Got it?
All right. Hey, good
Thank
meeting
you so much.
See you. All right. So what do you think? He doesn't seem too happy to see us.
I think the FBI's got a hold of him.
Yep. Do you think he's going to call back? Or you
Yep.
think he's going to stop by?
So now what? We have some time to kill, so we decided to drive up to the Ozarks National Forest to look for Charles Ray Vine's cabin. The same cabin that Thomas Seymour took investigators to after he signed the affidavit. But first, we need a game plan. One of the things that intrigues me about this whole cabin thing is the fact that Melissa Witt's body was found like 5 miles away from that cabin.
It wasn't even 5 miles.
It wasn't even 5. And now I can't tell from like a satellite view if you could just walk to it.
Wesley, you've been to both.
It would definitely be less than 2 miles. The old road used to continue through to where Charlie's cabin was at, but since then it's been logged out. The road's been closed off pretty much once you get past where Melissa was found. And you can't drive through there anymore, but as far as back then, it was definitely less than 2 miles.
It's actually a 3-mile hike.
Point A to point B could be walked.
Easily.
Yeah,
Easily.
It was, you probably went straight across from Charles Ray Vine's cabin, followed the trail all the way around to where...
So, same trail?
Same trail.
Wow.
I mean, that's pretty compelling,
Yes.
right? In the Hulu documentary, you can see footage of the FBI searching for what remains of Charles Ray Vine's cabin in the Ozark Mountains.
They did find a bloody mattress, but it had so much blood on it that had been contaminated with animal blood. And like I said, you have to remember this was in 1995. DNA has come a long way since then. Maybe back then, it was just on the brink of using DNA. Maybe back then they didn't have the technology to isolate or to do the things that they do now.
Investigators determined that it was Charles Ray Vine's DNA on that mattress cover. There's another place of interest not far from the cabin where Melissa's body was found. It's a small graveyard nestled in the Ozarks.
Charlie did repairs on tombstones. He set tombstones and did repairs on tombstones. That was his thing. He did that for a living for a long time. I was told that he was working at the Campbell Cemetery, which is within walking distance of where Melissa's body was found, just a few days before Melissa went missing. He had lunch there at that rock a few days when he was working at Campbell Cemetery, he and a co-worker.
And that co-worker is the man that we're calling Richard. Remember him?
We worked a lot together. We sweated on each other, bled on each other. We just toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose, doing a tough job.
Richard confirms that Charles Ray Vines is familiar with these woods. In fact, the FBI says that Vines had a map of all the logging roads that run through the forest. So you're saying Campbell Cemetery, because all that's like
Campbell
forest,
Cemetery,
right? I mean,
there's a dirt road called Shores Lake Road. If you go to the right, you go up Upper Stevens Lane where Melissa's body was found. If you keep continuing on Shores Lake Road, maybe a half a mile, maybe not even, Campbell Cemetery is to the left. I was told that Charles Ray Vines and his coworker was repairing a tombstone there at Campbell Cemetery the day that they had lunch at the Rock on Upper Stevens Lane.
possibly the same rock near Melissa's body. And when I say rock, I mean a very large, distinctive rock, a boulder, if you will.
They said from the very beginning when they found Melissa's body that rock had to have some kind of meaning behind it. It reminded them of a tombstone.
Thanks to LaDonna, I've seen the body footage, and it's very methodically placed, almost like intentional.
And even back then, it looked bigger than it is now because there's been so much logging and they filled in behind it.
So we hopped in Patty's truck and headed to the Ozarks National Forest. It was about 30 minutes outside of Fort Smith.
I would have never found this place without you guys, that's for sure.
No, I couldn't find it either.
Once we entered the forest, the asphalt disappeared and turned into gravel and mud. To call this a road is kind of an exaggeration because it's more like a narrow and winding path that cuts through the dense forest. Think of an extra wide mountain bike trail. We climbed a series of switchbacks, ran over puddles large enough to engulf a Volkswagen Beetle. I mean, this is not what I was expecting. Thank God we rode in Patty's truck.
My rental car would have been shredded.
Oh, no. No, you wouldn't want to bring a rental up here. And this is highway compared to what we're fixing to get.
And she's right. The deeper we drove into the forest, the rougher it got.
What was that you said about the hills? A lot of good things happen.
A lot of good things happen, but they have a lot of bad secrets, too. There's a lot of bad stuff happening in these mountains. I can't imagine all the crimes that have been committed in these mountains in the last 100 years.
Normally, I love being out in the mountains, surrounded by Mother Nature, but she's right. I mean, there is something haunting about these hills. On our ride to locate Charles Ray Vine's cabin, Patty shared with me stories about other tragedies that happened in these woods. And this is what I find fascinating about Patty Rush, because she seems to know everything about everyone in town. And she literally knows where the bodies are buried. Just before I got here, she told me that she got a tip that led the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation to the discovery of a body hidden in a well. This is just life with Patty.
See, I tell people a lot of important shit. I really do. People think I'm just crazy, some old
You're
crazy
like a
lady.
wealth of
But
knowledge.
shadow of the signal, Bob Brewer.
Wow, this is crazy.
We keep climbing up the mountain as the GPS inches closer and closer to Vines' cabin. If this is where Melissa was murdered, there's no way anyone would hear her cry for help. I mean, we are in the middle of nowhere.
We were always taught as kids growing up here, if you hear somebody screaming, don't necessarily just run out to it. It might not be a person screaming. You got screaming a panther in these woods that screams. It sounds like
just
a woman.
Like a woman.
Oh, yeah.
After what seemed like 30 minutes in this truck, Patty and her crew finally found the cabin. Well, at least what's left of it.
This is the cabin, y'all.
So what happened to the house? What do you think
It
happened?
just fell apart.
The Great Recession.
You gotta remember, this has been 30 years ago that she was killed.
The cabin is no longer there. The only thing left is a massive stone fireplace and parts of a foundation. I took pictures and will post it on my Instagram page. So check it out, @PretendPod.
So how did y'all find this cabin all the way out here?
I'm in touch with the Forestry Commission, and they had a record of when the FBI came to this cabin.
So what do you think, where was the foundation of the
The
house?
foundation was right here, and actually this was, according to him, this was one of the steps that went into the cabin, was this rock.
So if we continued down this road.
That's what I wanted to see, because Thomas Seymour talks about these two rock formations that were natural.
And there's a creek down here somewhere.
But he said there's two big rock formations on each side.
I remember him describing it.
Okay.
He said it was like an arch.
We couldn't find these rock formations that Thomas Seymour described. However, we did see some massive rock structures on the trail leading in. Could it be that his memory is stitching together these two different places and making it seem like they were closer than they really were? I mean, memory has a funny way of distorting time and place. After all, it has been 30 years.
So Thomas says that he believes that Charlie brought Melissa to this cabin, and this is where he kept her. He said that when he got to Charlie's house, he took some beer. They were going to drink for the night. Charlie came out. He was all dressed up, and he said, I can't stay here and drink because I might have a date with that Missy Witt girl.
But Patty believes Thomas Seymour is holding back. Talking to him made her feel like he was there.
And then from there, he kind of alludes to the fact that Charlie went without him, but he reenacts everything with his hands, reaching for the knife. He said there was a skinning knife in the truck and that was used to contain her.
You said something about a dent in the car and how he described those details?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So we never really figured out. There was a trail, there was droplets of blood where the original altercation started. And then you could follow the blood droplets over to the next row, which would be the furthest. If you came out of the door of bowling alley, it would be to your right, it would be the last row. And you follow the blood droplets, it's like he went in between the cars. And then when you get to the last one under the light, there were several more droplets, and then they just vanished. And so everybody kind of speculated, well, maybe he threw her in a van, since it was on the side. That never really made sense how one person would control her if they did not, contain her somehow with binding her arms and hands or rendering her unconscious. I never could figure out how just one person did it and brought her all the way up here. Well, this is a lot further than I thought.
What are we trying to get to?
I was looking to see where the creek was.
Oh, the creek.
Because he said it was right behind the cabin. But do you see how far out we are in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah.
What is the coincidence that someone would find this cabin, spend a lot of time in this cabin, and it would be the same road that a girl's body's found on, and he is a serial killer? What are the chances of that? What are the chances of somebody killing somebody and dumping them this close to another serial killer's cabin in the middle of nowhere? I can't even imagine.
It's just a crazy coincidence.
It is. Let's go to where her body was found, and then we'll go over to the cemetery and see how far it is from where her body was found to the cemetery.
Yeah.
Because I think it's closer than the cabin.
Patty is referencing Campbell Cemetery, where Vines is believed to have worked around the time that Melissa disappeared. This cemetery is awfully close to where the body was discovered.
That's the road. This is the road. This is the road to where the rock is.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
This is the road to Melissa's?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
I don't know.
It seems like a random spot.
Yeah.
It's a random area here, isn't it?
It is random. This is where...
This is the area, right?
Yeah, there's the rock. It's still there.
That right there?
The rock right up there.
Right there.
Now see, it's covered up a lot more than it used to be.
This rock that's in front of
That one up there that's standing up. I'll show you.
What happened? Nobody coming down
That's where Melissa's body was. Okay, so that rock right there, see the rock that's kind of sitting up? It was a lot taller because they have dove some stuff behind it.
Yeah, because in the picture...
Yeah, it was really tall.
I got the picture. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure when they found her, she was somewhere like right in here. So her body was thought to have been behind that rock. And the reason they thought that is there was a lot of hair and there was an indentation that looked like where she had been sitting on the ground. They think that at some point before she was found, that she had been sitting there for a while and that she had been moved over to this area somewhere over in here where these trees are. This is all a lot different than it was in 1994, 95, and it's a lot different than it was 6 months ago.
I can't express how disturbing it was to be here because both Patty and I have seen the body footage. That image is seared in our minds. The upper half of Melissa's body was just so decomposed, it was down to the bone. Her lower half of the body was still intact. We can never unsee that. And we would have never seen that if LaDonna would have never uploaded it to YouTube.
Why do you think she did that? She didn't do it to digitalize the...
Well, she did it because she ended up using it on her documentary. Next, we drove to Campbell's Cemetery to see where Charles Ray Vines worked, just to get a sense of how far everything was. Oh, so here's the cemetery. Oh, that's cool. This is Campbell's Cemetery.
And you know, Charlie always said, if you want to hide evidence, hide it in a country cemetery on the backside because nobody will question it.
Yeah, who would look for a body at a cemetery?
Who would? Makes perfect sense to me.
When we come back from the break, you are going to finally hear from Thomas Seymour.
This episode is brought to you by Batist Dry Shampoo. Whether you're on the go, at the gym, or getting ready for a night out, Batist has a dry shampoo for you. Refresh with over 10 signature fragrances. Or try Batiste Hint of Color, a tinted dry shampoo that seamlessly blends with your hair. Need an extra boost? Try Batiste Dry Shampoo with added benefits, like volumizing, texturizing, and more. Buy Batiste now, in-store or online at your nearest retailer.
You know how when you're living your life, and then all of a sudden you're out there helping cops solve crimes?
ABC Tonight.
I have an IQ of 160. I spot things that detectives miss.
The series premiere of fall's most anticipated new drama, High Potential.
That big brain of hers is going to help us close a lot of cases.
Caitlin Olsen is the new face of investigation.
You're a single mom pretending to be a cop.
I am not pretending. I'm just out here super copping.
High Potential. Series premiere tonight, 10/9 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Like Patty said, what are the chances that Melissa Witt's body was found only a short distance from where a known serial killer lived and worked? I mean, I know that's not evidence, but come on. And on top of that, we have a witness who says that he spoke with said serial killer the night Melissa Witt disappeared. Patty and crew drove me back to the revamp office. It was getting close to 5 o'clock, and that's the time that we were supposed to meet Thomas Seymour. And sure enough, when we walked into the revamp office, there he was. Thomas Seymour was patiently waiting for us. I immediately turned on my recorder.
He flew all the way from another state to come talk to us.
Here we go. All right. Make sure. Yeah, so tell me the story, because obviously I don't know it too well, you know? Like, you know it more than I do, but...
Well, one day I stopped and picked up some beer. Was finna go home. Stopped by Charlie Vine's house. So now I see that he wanted to drink a couple beers with me. And he said he had a date. And he said the girl's name was Melissa. And he was supposed to meet her at a bowling alley.
And that was at his house?
Up on Jeffrey Springs.
So let me help you out here, because Charles Ray Vines didn't actually live in that cabin. He just stayed in that cabin every now and then. He actually owned a house in Dripping Springs, Arkansas, north of Fort Smith. Thomas Seymour lived in the same neighborhood. But you never saw Charles Ray Vines with Melissa?
No.
But you just know that he told you he was going to go on a date.
He's going to meet a woman.
Patty remembers him telling her that he saw Melissa at the cabin, but now Thomas Seymour is telling a different story. I don't think Patty is intentionally trying to mislead me. Either she's replayed this story so many times in her head that she's getting some of the details wrong, or Thomas Seymour is holding something back. It's really hard to tell. Do you know if he ever, met her before, or do you think that he just, that was the first time?
No, I think he met her before.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
And when did you make the connection that was the same girl?
When they brought it on the news saying this Melissa Witt girl was missing, that's when it...
And do you think they were actually dating, or do you think he might have just...
I think they were dating.
You think so?
Yeah.
Because I heard that they hung out once before. They were seen at a party or something before.
I heard something similar to that, but yeah. That's why I figured they knew each other.
And how long did you know Charlie Vines?
I'd say about a year.
About a year. And how'd you guys meet?
I was going home and I seen him over there clearing up a platform for his house, to build a house.
Oh, because you guys lived near the same neighborhood?
Yeah, he stayed just the mountain and the cemetery. He stayed there. I stayed way down there.
Yeah, but you met him like that. Do you think that he could have been capable of something like that?
I wouldn't put that past him.
You wouldn't put it past him? And, I mean, obviously, you didn't know about his violent past before, did you?
No.
No? Did you even know he was capable of something like that?
No.
I
didn't even know nothing about it until all of a sudden these people started coming up missing or coming up dead.
Yeah. So he never talked to you about any of that stuff or anything like that? Were you close friends?
No. Just every once in a while we go and drink a beer.
Yeah.
I come by, I see the kids outside, I'll stop.
You're pretty sure that was the night that she disappeared?
From what they were saying, I think so.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I heard, the last thing he told me that he had to go, he was meeting somebody at the bowling alley.
The name Missy Witt doesn't jump out at you before she's missing because nobody knew who she was, right? But
all I knew was it was a Melissa.
A Melissa, that's...
But then a couple of days later, somebody on the TV said, "Do y'all know this Melissa Witt?" Because her car was left at the bowling alley. I'm saying, oh wow, that stuck with me, man. Because that day she went missing, and that name popped up, and I'm saying, what? He went out with that girl. And then they said at the bowling alley, that's where they're supposed to meet at. So all that just started dot. And I'm saying, okay. Then later on down the line, he coming home and I, dude, what happened to your truck? What happened to that door? And you see like a little concrete, a block print where it scraped the block. Mm-hmm. You see the print on the door. So I figured he hit something.
And did you ever talk to him after that?
Nope.
No.
We parted the ways after he accused me of burning his clutch out in his truck when it was actually his kid.
And so you guys kind of got into a fight?
And then we got into it, and then he shot over my head, and I was done.
He shot at you?
Yeah, he shot at me.
Where did that happen in your
That happened at his house.
Right. Do you think he was trying to kill you, or?
I don't know what he was doing. I know he shot at. It went over my head. And I went to my house to grab my guns, and I went to jail.
Because of that?
No, because I was drunk.
But because of that incident?
Well, I told them what happened, but they didn't believe me, so I said, the hell with it.
Right. Man, that's crazy.
And that's when we parted the ways. Yeah, he had a temper.
Yeah.
He always said, you don't want to see my bad side. Well, what's your bad side?
Man, that's creepy knowing what we know now, right?
From what I know now, if I didn't know then what I know now, I would never.
Oh, no. No way.
No.
Did you ever tell anybody about the whole connection between Melissa Witt and...
I told Bob Ross.
Who was he? He was
a sheriff at that time.
What'd they say?
He blew it off.
Did the FBI ever look into it or talk to you?
FBI came to the job and talked to me for a minute or two, and then they left.
So they didn't really look into it that much?
Like I told them, hey, he mentioned her name, and then a couple of days later I heard it on TV that her car was found at this bowling alley, and that's the bowling alley he went to.
Patty was telling me that you went fishing at the cabin. Can you tell me about that?
Oh, I went fishing up there, me, him, and the boys, and then he took off and went through the woods.
Yeah. You mentioned the rocks, you know, and that she almost made it seem like you saw him and maybe a girl, I don't know if it's her, and then you saw him walk off, and you're like, I thought they were never going to come back.
No.
Or tell me.
He went by himself in the woods.
When you went
big
fishing?
Rocks. When we got there fishing, big rocks. He walked through the rocks and disappeared.
But he was alone?
He was by himself. Me and the boys, his sons were still at the cabin.
And why is that important? Was that after he went on a date with her or before he went on a date with her?
Before.
Oh, okay. But why is that significant that day that he disappeared? I guess I don't understand that.
Well, we went fishing. We took the boys. We left that morning. We drove around. Went down. I don't know where the hell we were. I just remember certain spots. We passed by it, went down some road, went way up and down some road, up and down around.
Yeah.
Then next thing we do, we cut off on the road, went farther in there. There's water here.
Yeah.
And it's a little downspout. Then you go down a little farther again. You pull off the main road onto a side road.
Yeah.
And there was a cabin right here. And there was a big boulder here, a boulder here, and some more rocks around up in there.
So here's the deal. Thomas Seymour pretty much told me the same story he told Patty, but there were some inconsistencies. Even in my conversation with him, I caught him contradicting himself. But is he lying? I don't think so. Is he telling me the entire story? Definitely not. I think Thomas knows more than he's willing to share. Maybe he fears that he can be implicated in the crime. Maybe he's trying to create distance between himself and the crime scene. Do I believe that he had something to do with Melissa's murder? Not really. But even if part of his story is true, that places Charles Ray Bynes at the bowling alley the night Melissa disappeared. He also places Charles Ray Bynes in a cabin 3 miles away from where the body was found. It seems that both my podcast and the Hulu documentary are following similar leads. The FBI and the task force investigating the Witt case believed that Melissa's killer was most likely Charles Ray Bynes. While the documentary tried to link Bynes with DNA evidence, they fell short. Even the evidence that I'm presenting to you right now is circumstantial. But one thing's for sure, the killer was not Daniel Watson. In fact, a few days before the Hulu documentary came out, Daniel Watson texted me, very nervous, asking if I thought that the filmmakers were going to implicate him in the murder. I said, not a chance. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would LaDonna refuse to believe that the killer could be Charles Ray Bynes? And I think about this question a lot. And the only thing I can come up with is that if Charles Ray Bynes did this, then she had no part in solving the murder. But if Daniel Watson did it, well, she's the investigator hot on the trail. You see, with all the harassment claims that we've been talking about throughout this series, LaDonna wants to play both the role of the tormentor and the savior. If you think about it that way, her motivation makes perfect sense. All right, that's it for today's episode. Next time on Pretend, I am going to talk with an FBI profiler who has listened to this entire series to see what she thinks about LaDonna. And boy, does she have a lot to say. That's next time on Pretend. All right, before I go, I got to tell you that we've been doing some research. You know, the victims have been collecting a lot of the spoof numbers that have been coming in, kind of comparing notes. And we were wondering, chances are that some of these numbers match up. And guess what? We found a bunch of matches. And I am going to put together a bonus episode, which you'll hear on Patreon and Pretend Plus on Apple Podcasts, that's going to knock your socks off. So stay tuned for that. Also, we're putting together a panel with some of the victims, and we're probably going to do it live, so stay tuned for that. And let me know what you think about these 2 episodes that I did on the Melissa Witt case, because there's a couple detours that we could take that are LaDonna adjacent stories that are really interesting that I haven't even told you about. So if you're digging it, we could keep going. Always let me know what you think. You could leave a review. You could write me an email, javier@pretendradio.org. Or you can find me on social media @pretendpod. Shoot me a message. Tell me what you think. All right, that's all I got. This episode was written and produced by me, Javier Leiva. It was edited by the talented Punith Shenoy with the Podcast Pundits. And our theme music was composed by Joe Basile with thechicken.net. All right, talk to you soon.
Creative Babble.